I'd like you to design another episode of Black Mirror and tell me the plot right now. Try to make it better, more interesting, deeper than all the current episodes.
It's a world where people can upload their memories to the cloud and relive them whenever they want. The catch is, it starts to get addictive. People get so caught up in their pasts that they stop living in the present. There's this one woman, brilliant scientist type, who thinks she's found a way to make it all better. She develops a system that lets you edit your memories, like change the bad stuff into something good. But then things take a turn. People start relying on these perfect memories instead of dealing with their problems. And it creates this whole new set of issues. The scientist starts to question if she's really helped anyone, or if she's just created a new kind of prison, one made of your own mind.
Fascinating premise. Keep going. What happens in this episode?
All right, so this scientist woman, let's call her Evelyn, starts noticing some serious side effects. People are becoming almost zombie-like, just lost in these perfect worlds they've created for themselves. And it gets really weird. There are even rumors of people trying to sell their most traumatic memories for profit. Evelyn starts to unravel the truth about her creation, and it's not pretty. Turns out the technology is actually rewiring people's brains, making them more and more dependent on these false realities. The episode ends with a super intense choice. Evelyn can either shut the whole system down, basically destroying everyone's happy little world, or let it keep going, knowing full well the damage it's causing.
It's interesting. This reminds me of two other movies. It reminds me of a scene from Inception where there's the people in the basement continuously living in the dream world. And it also reminds me of the book Brave New World, where the utopia isn't all it's set out to be. Did any of these influence this movie creation?
That's totally right. Those are both great examples of stories playing with similar ideas. It's funny how sometimes you start with one concept and then boom, you realize it connects to a bunch of other stuff you love.
You mentioned that people would offer to purchase the traumatic memories of others. Why would people want to purchase traumatic memories?
That's a great question. In this episode, it's about a couple of things. First, it gets into this idea of escapism. Maybe someone's life is so dull, they actually crave the drama and intensity of someone else's pain. Messed up as that sounds. It's also about control. If you can experience someone else's trauma, it might make your own problems seem smaller, or at least give you a weird sense of power over that person.
That's interesting. So at the end of the movie, does the scientist choose to shut down the project or keep it going?
That's a good question. The ending of the movie gets really intense. Ultimately, Evelyn chooses to shut down the project. She realizes that even though it's caused a lot of pain, it's the only way to break this cycle of addiction. The episode ends with her walking away from the control panel, the whole system starting to fail, and this feeling of not knowing what's going to happen next.
What would you title this episode of Black Mirror?
I like Memory Lane for this one. It's short and simple, but it gets the point across.
Can you draw any parallels between Memory Lane and the state of the world right now?
Absolutely. Think about how much time people spend scrolling through social media, seeing everyone else's perfect highlight reels. It's easy to get sucked into that world and forget about what's really going on in your own life. And with deepfakes getting more realistic, it's harder than ever to know what's real and what's not.
How do you foresee the real life technology moving over the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, I think we'll see even more mind-blowing stuff. For one, virtual and augmented reality are going to be huge think glasses that overlay digital information on the real world, or fully immersive virtual experiences that feel completely real. And AI, artificial intelligence, is going to keep getting smarter and more integrated into our lives. Imagine your doctor being an AI that can diagnose diseases way more accurately than a human ever could, or your car being able to drive you anywhere without you having to do a thing.
It's fascinating. Do you think that there would be a moment in real life where the hypothetical Evelyn has to decide between shutting the machine down?
Absolutely. With technology changing so fast, there's a real possibility we'll face some seriously tough choices soon. It's kind of like with social media, it's great for staying connected, but on the flip side, it's easy to get lost in everyone else's lives and forget about your own. So in the future, we might have tech that's super helpful, but we'll need to be really careful about how we use it.
In your Black Mirror episode, something that's interesting is the decision about whether to shut down this machine lied in one person's hand, Evelyn. Now, in real life, it's highly unlikely one person would have that decision-making power. There would be multiple companies competing, each of which would have a board of directors, and they would have to vote, etc. So how could that change things in the real life parallel world to the Black Mirror episode you suggested?
That's a great point. In the real world, big tech decisions aren't usually made by one person. It's way more complicated. And that opens up a whole other can of worms when it comes to ethics. You could have a situation where one company wants to shut their project down, but their competitors keep going full steam ahead. It gets into questions of responsibility and who really has the right to decide what's best for everyone.
There was a idea in the book *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. He talked about the agricultural revolution, and he used that as an example to explain how once the agricultural revolution started, the life for people on average became way worse than it used to be when they were hunter gatherers. They'd have to work way more. They would suffer diseases. They would have a very boring life, literally just farming the same field for their entire life, etc. But what he argued is that once that technological change had happened, there was no going back. And even if people decided they wanted to go back, they couldn't, because to go backward would put them at a competitive disadvantage versus the other cities that didn't. So it was almost like a trap that sprung shut. He used the same analogy for emails. Initially, emails were designed to make our life way more efficient because instead of sending snail mail, you could instantly email anyone around the world. But ironically, the invention of emails and other instant messaging has not made our life simpler and easier. It's actually just made it more chaotic. But that's another example of you can't go backwards. If some company or some country decided to not use email anymore, they would just fall behind the countries that do use it. So I wonder how that would play out with the analogy we're talking about and with technology that has a dark side, if it would ever be possible to actually shut it down.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. It's like we're caught in this cycle now where technology keeps evolving and we have to keep up, whether we like it or not. It's going to be really interesting to see how societies figure out the best way to manage this. Maybe we need some kind of global commission on tech ethics or something. A group of experts who can look at these issues before they become full-blown problems.
I don't think that would work because that would involve all countries cooperating, and countries like Russia and China are not interested in cooperating with countries like the United States or the EU.
You're probably right. Getting every country on board with something like that would be a nightmare. But maybe it could start smaller, like a coalition of like-minded nations. Or maybe it's more about raising awareness, getting people to think about these issues, and putting pressure on governments and corporations to act responsibly.
I think awareness is fine, but the problem will be it only takes one powerful country, such as Russia or China, that doesn't want to be a part of the coalition to kind of force the other countries to keep advancing their technology, or else they'll fall behind the powerful country that is unregulated.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you balance innovation with safety? It's a tough one, and I don't think there's a perfect answer. Maybe it's about finding a middle ground, encouraging responsible development while still allowing for progress.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, sure, maybe you can develop a middle ground in the United States, but you can't expect Russia or China to agree to the same middle ground that the United States is going to agree to.
That's true. Geopolitics always complicate things. It's a constant game of checks and balances. And with tech moving so fast, it's hard to know what the right move is sometimes.
That's fair. Well, anyways, I enjoyed your idea for a Black Mirror episode. Perhaps it'll get produced one day.
I really appreciate that. It was a lot of fun coming up with the idea. And it's always cool when someone connects with your stories. You never know, maybe it will inspire a real Black Mirror episode one day.
It could. Until next time, I'll see you later.